What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. This right here, as you all know, is the podcast where we dive into the deep, dark, murky waters with a plethora of legendary guests. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's REXXX. You might also know me as AKA the King of Sleaze, AKA the Hair Metal High Priest, and most importantly, AKA Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. That's right. Search your feelings. You know it to be true that you are looking at the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams. I got a million fans. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop Bop Loo Bop Wop Bam Bam Shazam. Hot damn. Feeling good. Everybody in the house, of course, looking good, including you all out there. That is, of course, made possible by my favorite product. And I got them falling on me over here. Got so many of them. Buy stock in this stuff. If you want the quaff like Roth, get you some. And remember to spray responsibly. Coming to you, as always, from the lush lavender Lounge of Love, where it all goes down. Joined, as always, by none other than Keith Hernandez Puppet. Number 17 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts. The man is an all-time great. This is, of course, the No Frills podcast. You don't get no frills because you get plenty of thrills. And what are those thrills, you might ask, Rex? Well, that's pretty simple. That's getting to look at these beautiful faces. And I am very excited about today's episode because this man is, lo and behold, a legend. Quite a Renaissance man, actually. Musician, author. The guy does it all. Actor. So, very excited to be able to have the chance to talk to him today. He should be on his way in here in un momento. Just checking with him right there. So, very excited. Let me also remind you something else that I'm excited about. My passion project, my glam sleaze metal band, Love Sword. And I'm still looking for virtuoso level players. You can't be the front man because there's only one. But you can be the backing band behind the man. So, serious inquiries only, of course. And obviously, I will be, having a little chin wag today with another great front man. So I am very excited about that. He's going to get on here and talk a lot of shit, I would imagine. Talk a whole lot of shit. At least I'm hoping he will. Very interesting fella. A guy that I find extremely fascinating for his views on well, namely, I came across him while waiting for him to get in here through his excellent book on just pretty much all things combat. So I'm always down for a book like that. The book is called Fight, and I want to get the title right here. Everything you ever wanted to know about ass kicking, but were afraid you'd get your ass kicked for asking. That's a mouthful right there. But the book is a stellar work of what I consider genius on the arts of combat and pugilism and all things fighting. And I'm always down for a good book on that. So let me just say first and foremost that anybody that puts out a combat book has got my attention. Now, before he joins us here, I would like to also offer up a big shout out and a big thank you. I just put up at the time of recording this episode number 100. I don't know where we'll be when I put today's episode out, but 100 is such a monumental number, blows my mind. So I have to first obviously extend a huge thank you to all the people who come on here, chop it up with me, and make it possible for me to get to 100 fantastic interviews. So kudos to all the people that have come on here with me. As I've said before, I respect and admire all of them deeply for their talents. And being able to do this wouldn't be possible. Obviously, you can't bat it back and forth without a dance partner, so to speak. So, you know, it's been a huge honor to speak to all the people that I've had the opportunity to speak to. And I'm also looking forward to speaking to today's guest. Sorry about that. I lost the plot there for a minute. But anyway, I digress. This man right here that's coming on today, like I said, I'm super excited about. You know, we don't edit nothing here, so you get to see a look behind everything here. 50 years old, I don't know how to give you all this technological, these advanced technological things. So you even get to see me texting. Look at that. This is how it all unfolds right here, people. So let me first, again, let me continue where I was. See how I lose track of thought, and you guys get to witness the, well, the genius, right, Keith? You witness firsthand the genius. This is the antithesis of the motley crew of podcasts. You get to see it all. And here's our guest. So I will digress. Big thank you and a big shout out to all my guests. Here's to 100 more, 1,000 more. Sky's the limit. Let's get him in here and chop it up with him on PodScum. I'm excited. I feel like right off the bat, he's going to probably laugh at my hair, but I'm going to just, you know, I'm going to go with it anyway, Eugene, because, you know, you can't be the king of glam and sleaze metal without the locks. You can't go around and claiming that you're the son of David Lee Roth without the locks. You know what I mean?
No, I was just laughing because I was happy that we made it after all of the, you know, internet is never reliable in that regard. So
I'm happy that we made it too. And in my little preamble before you came on here, I wanted to make sure that I got the title of your book right, because obviously it is called Fight, but then there is a somewhat of a subtitle afterwards, you know, everything you ever wanted to know about ass kicking, but we're afraid you get your ass kicked for asking. Now, full disclosure here, I came to your music very recently after the book. I had no idea that, you know, that this is not what you did, that you didn't just go around and write books about ass kicking. But upon further exploration, I come to find out that you are indeed a somewhat of a, at least now that I'm doing my research, a hardcore legend.
Yeah. This will be when the book comes out. I got a memoir coming out in August.
Awesome.
And I think that, you know, and I'm reading all the other ones like that. Yeah, I helped with Harley Flanagan's, and I mean, before he even submitted to a publisher, I was reading it, and, you know, Roger from Agnostic Front, and I'm kind of reading them, and I'm like, I'm digging on them, and their stories are a lot more florid than mine. So I went back and asked the publisher, why do you already got Harley's? What do you need? She goes, I think your story is a little bit different. And I go, well, I don't want to put all that filthy sex stuff in there. She goes, I'm not talking about that. I go, okay. She goes, I'm just talking about your journey. I go, okay, let's cover birth to 27, in, out, nobody gets hurt. We stop before we get to OXBOW. And she was like, perfect. So it's an entertaining little read. And, you know, and I had conversations with people who people still think are good guys. So I decided, well, am I going to be nice or am I going to hurt people's feelings? And I opted for the latter.
Yeah. Which I think in any good memoir, you know, I mean, if you're being candid and telling the truth, I mean, you know, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, so to speak, you know? So, I mean.
And also my attitude is like, what's going to happen to me now? Is it people going to show up and beat me up? Right. Not going to be my friends. They're not going to book my bands. Well, whatever you got to do, you do it. So,
well, I'm very interested into when, because I am a big combat sports guy myself. I am a little bit less UFC and a little bit more traditional boxing, but I'm interested into when your fascination or love affair, as you might want to call it, with combat sports and just combat and martial arts started for you.
Oh, it had to be in the 60s, man. My grandfather was a big fight fan. I mean, up to and including having a subscription to Ring magazine, which would come to the house. And you got to understand that, like, somebody like back then, he was called Cassius Clay. I mean, his significance was totemic, man. He I mean, just from I mean, it was, we had never seen anybody like him, and certainly during the '60s, it was what was precisely what was needed at the time. And I always liked the idea of being able to. And I can't even explain why it ended up being that way, but being able to physically handle yourself, you know.
Yeah.
So at the same time that I'm hanging out with my grandfather, like reading his Ring magazines or him reading them to me or talking about these fighters, I had a cousin who was maybe 2 or 3 years older, Debbie, who was obsessed with teaching me how to fight. Which, when you're that age, when I'm 5 and she's like 7 or maybe even 9, it amounted to her kicking my ass a lot. But I still, early stages, came to believe there was a great benefit, a philosophical benefit to being able to defend yourself, you know.
And did you ever particularly what was your upbringing like? Was it an upbringing that was riddled with a lot of violence and fighting?
Not really. No, I mean, you know, not at all. I mean, outside of the fact that I grew up in New York in the '70s, right? Yeah. So, which was a weird time with everybody coming back from Vietnam, blasted out of their heads. You know, they didn't call it PTSD then. They were just like, dude's fucking nuts. So that, you know, and you know, this is. To see the New York I grew up in, you have to watch movies. And if you're young, like my kids think I'm crazy until they watch movies like Taxi Driver or, you know, I mean, Death Wish or shit like that. This is an accurate representation, so semi-accurate representation of what life was like back then. So, you know, me getting attacked by 20 guys in a park where my friends and I had decided to go sledding just happened in 1971. Just happened. You wake up surrounded by these guys and you're getting your ass beat. They're not even trying to rob you. They're just trying to beat and humiliate you for reasons unknown to me. Unknown to me. You know? So I decided that, and then I got beaten up by a judo guy. And then that's when I started to put it together. Like I was bigger and stronger than he was. And it was such a ridiculous fight. It was judo. So he just kept, you know, every time I got up and tried to punch him, he threw me. He just threw a hip, you know. And at a certain point, we both just started laughing because I was clearly getting nowhere. He wasn't going to stop, and I had nothing. So I think that was right around the time I decided I need to start doing something. So at the age of 10, I went over to the boys' club and started boxing, and then continued that until I fell in love with Bruce Lee, and then started boxing and doing karate around the corner at the church. And then, you know, that lasted until they started asking me for money. And then, you know, then it was high school wrestling, you know, and then studying with this guy, Charlie Nelson, who was an ex-Marine, old guy, ex-Marine, but was one of those, like, probably first MMA guys, right? Fought in Guadalcanal, decided to stay, became super obsessed with combat arts, and then was teaching this weird amalgam in the Upper West Side, New York. So studied with him for a couple of years, but then got bitten by the bodybuilding bug and just started doing a lot of that. So
it sounds like you're pretty well-rounded as far as like having like a lot of different disciplines in your background. Is there one that you really identify with most? Like, you hear guys say, that their focus is with jujitsu or boxing, as you mentioned, or do you just like the idea of them all being kind of fused together?
Well, I'm 7 days a week going to jiu-jitsu, and I got my black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu a couple months ago. So I'm clearly obsessed with Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I mean, 7 days a week, and I got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get there. So I'm morning crew. I mean, you can't get more committed than that. But each step of the journey has offered a lot. Like, you know, I spent 9 years, got a brown belt in Kempo karate, and a lot of guys will crap on that unless you're Stephen Wonderboy Thompson or Lyoto Machida, or Gunnar Nelson. But the reality of it is, in a situation when I was doing MMA, we were doing these smokers in San Francisco. I was very comfortable lifting my feet off the ground. And the couple of years I spent in Muay Thai, that also helped quite a lot. So, and then taking punches, that's what boxing. So all of these things have mixed martial arts is this idea that you never get really good at one, but your personality determines the one that you really, what you just asked me, your base martial art.
Right.
And for me, that's always been grappling.
And
I mean, even up to and including when I was street fighting, right?
Right.
I'd pop a guy in and take him down to the ground and sit on his chest and like, are you done?
Yeah.
Or alternatively, getting beaten. I was only beaten when a guy, we got knocked down to the ground, taken down, reversed, sat on my chest and go, are you done? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you mentioned growing up in the 70s in New York, part of the hardcore scene. Obviously, the world knows that New York City, bar none, a legendary hardcore scene. You growing up in that hardcore scene as a black man, though, did you catch a lot of flack for being for running in that particular circle?
Not at all. Yeah, I mean,
no?
You need to understand that, like, I got into punk rock in 1977, right?
Okay.
And there were plenty of black guys. Eugene Beauvoir, who played bass for the Plasmatics, was black.
Okay.
Ivan Julian, who was in Richard Void in the Voidoids, was one of the Voidoids. So Buzz Wayne from Buzz and the Flyers. There are a lot of black guys already in the punk rock scene. But by the time punk rock started to kind of fritter out, because people like Blondie were making real money, and Ramones were playing. The first time I saw the Ramones. Second time I saw the Ramones was at Great Adventure, which was an amusement park in Jersey.
Yes. Yep.
So they'd already been kind of accepted to a certain degree by the mainstream. So when hardcore hit, it didn't hit New York really. Well, I'm sure guys there will dispute this, but I'm going to make the claim it didn't really hit New York. Hardcore didn't really hit New York in a hardcore fashion without discussing the Bad Brains. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So the Bad Brains hit in New York, and then that's that you can't separate. They left DC, and you can't separate that from. You just can't. So, and that largely affected because those guys rolled deep with the stage crew. Kendu, one of the guys who was a longtime roadie, Jerry Williams. So all of a sudden you had the hardcore kids were birthed with the Bad Brains and the Bad Brains roadies and all the reggae cats who showed up. So there was never. I didn't encounter any sort of racial weirdness until not even in San Francisco. Not even though the first guy I talk about in the memoir, first man to ever kiss me on the lips that wasn't my father was this guy Bob Noxious from the Fuck Up. So when I met him, he had white power on his shirt with a big swastika in the middle.
Oh.
And he's coming through the crowd like over people's heads. And I was like, when he gets here, he's gone, and I'm getting ready to swig, and he gets like within 3 feet from me, crowd surfing over the crowd, and then kind of butterflies forward and kisses me on the mouth. I was like, all right.
Wow. Well, that certainly could have gone a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but then we went to LA, that was a very different scene, right? That was a totally different scene. And I remember going to a show at the Olympic and having to chase guys from, Okies, man, who were just like my drummer was a Whipping Boys drummer at the time was a black guy, but he was his father was a American black guy. His mother was a German, so he's more culturally German than he was black. So he didn't know how to deal with this shit. And people calling him names, it was like, oh, let's go get him.
Yeah.
But that wasn't until LA. And keep in mind, I've been with the hardcore thing and traveling. I've been all over through the South, DC, Boston. The Midwest, never had any weird stuff happen outside of Los Angeles.
Now, obviously, a lot of martial arts, are attached to a philosophy or a religious doctrine. Do you incorporate any of that into your own life, or is it just the combative stuff? Like, are you a Buddhist or any of that kind of, adopt any of that stuff? Adopt any of the spiritual side of the martial arts into your life at all?
No, I mean, I'm a pretty introspective, philosophical guy in general, but in regards to how I apply my trade in jiu-jitsu, I'm an asshole, man. Yeah. I'm at the church of asshole, and I like you if I still do the asshole-ish thing and apologize as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got here from training, and that, You know, as a guy never rolled before, and he's kind of a big guy, and I was like, I need to keep this guy down. So I kind of grab his shoulder and then drive my elbow into his jaw just to hold him down. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm sorry. I don't know why I do this, but I got it. So you know, I'm an old guy. You know, this guy is like 240 pounds. I'm 230 right now myself. So, but still, fuck that. But no, I'm spiritual, but not as a result of martial arts, really.
So you touch on some really interesting stuff in the book, and I made some notes here. I really like the some things that I read in the Broken Jaw chapter, where you are not opposed to and I like this because I think this is how the real world really does work. You say in that chapter that there is nothing wrong with picking up things nearby and fucking clocking somebody with them if need be. I mean, at the end of the day, I think when we watch organized combat sports, we obviously think of rules and structure to it. But when you're fighting for your life and you want to walk away alive, there is no rules.
Hey, man, the best street fighter that I've ever seen, and I don't say this means that he won every time, but I say that this means that this guy fought with a kind of fury, a kind of existential fury with Harley Flanagan. And I remember, and a lot of those guys from New York hardcore actually fought that way and I don't know if, I think a lot of it was him coming from really horrible neighborhoods. Like, he's got a hippie mother and stepfather, but the only place they could afford to live in New York in the 60s was the Lower East Side, where, his father is actually Latino, but he's with white, his mother and his stepfather. So he presented as white and was getting his ass kicked every day. The only other cat I knew from the Lower East Side who grew up there was a Russian guy, a white-haired, white-skinned, red-haired Russian guy. Not so I say white, but I don't mean Georgian. And he fought every fucking day. So by the time he got to high school at 14, unbeknownst to many people there, he was a pretty skilled pugilist. And I saw him knock out a guy who outweighed him by about 60 pounds, and the guy didn't even see it coming, man. You fight every day. You do so with a certain sort of kind of ferocity. And Harley definitely, but these guys are also physically small, right? I mean, Vinny Stigma was one of the earliest guys I knew from the scene who took martial arts. And Vinny is not, you can look on my Instagram page, a picture of the two of us.
I've met him. I've met him in person at a show. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's smaller than I am. I'm 6'1". So, but yeah, those guys, and that was also interesting because I'm old enough to have remembered the 77 version of punk rock.
Right.
And these guys were kind of, waif-like and getting their asses kicked. And when the hardcore kids came in, they were like, I got enough of this shit at home. It's not going to happen on the streets. Even, this Robbie Crip Crasher, I remember some girl came, she was walking with her boyfriend and stopped and looked at him, pointed and laughed. So he spit in her face, right? So the boyfriend feels some need to and I understand his position.
Sure.
Girl, she was rude, but what? Okay. So he comes back with three or four guys to beat up Robbie Crip Crash. People go, Robbie's having, and then and we're there. Suddenly we're there.
It's on. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, so it's not the punk rock generation that you could just laugh at and throw stuff at.
Right.
These hardcore kids were in my mind a nice newer model. Michael Gira just said something I thought was pretty interesting. He was like, what I didn't like about hardcore, he said, was that it was full of people who were really wanting to belong, and that the music was about that. And I've never been interested in that. And I was like, that kind of really closely mirrors my thing. Like I was going to shows forever. Before I was embraced, and it was only until I went to California, started Whipping Boy, and came back with Whipping Boy, so that everybody thought, oh, Eugene is this California guy, that there was any scene that had claimed me as its own,
Yeah. So are there another interesting thing? You've obviously done a lot of writing and for numerous publications. And correct me if I have any of this wrong, but at one point in the book, did you interview Kevin Weeks?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I read Kevin's book. And obviously, for people that don't know, he was kind of for less than, for all intents and purposes, the right-hand man of Whitey Bulger, famous Boston gangster, a guy who did a lot of his, dirty work, maybe back in the day, they would have called him a leg breaker, whatever, you know what I mean? But so what was that meeting like? Because I get the sense from his book, man, that he's the genuine article, a real tough guy.
Oh, he's a real tough guy.
Yeah.
100%. And, I mean, and by which I mean, also a lifelong martial artist.
Right.
Had started, I mean, he said it was a rite of passage in Boston that you just did it, right?
Yeah.
You're an Irish kid in Boston. You went to go golden gloves. That was a given. I mean, I think his quote was, it was either him or Petey Walsh who said it. He said, if you didn't do this, you might as well have been wearing a skirt.
Right.
I mean, it's not so politically correct nowadays, but I thought that was hilarious.
Right.
And then he kind of branched out into karate. So very much the same journey that I had. But, we got in his car and we spent the whole day kind of driving around Southie and him pointing stuff out and showing me stuff. And it was intense, man. It was intense. I mean, a couple of interesting points that I don't really put in the book is that he's got this kind of interesting conversational affectation that I think comes from years of believing that you're being followed by the feds, which of course they were. So that, like if you saw cartoons, all the tough guys in cartoons, they always talked out of the side of their mouths like that. Well, that came from when you're lined up in prison, you're not supposed to talk. So everybody they're talking like this, right? So he does this weird kind of thing with undertones, which I found really actually kind of cool and affecting, where you just I was talking that, and you could never. Thank God I had a tape recorder, because there were many times where I was like, I think he said that,
Right.
But yeah, he was an interesting guy. And I mean, we were walking around Southie. We're coming around a corner, and there's some old dudes, old, like 70, not super old, but old.
Yeah.
Right. Like under normal circumstances, a guy who's like ass I can kick. And the guy's mad dogging me so aggressively, right? It's like, fuck. He's tall, but he's old. But, I'm just looking at him. There's no affect on my face. I'm just looking at him. And then as we come around this corner and he can see that I'm walking with Kevin, his whole fucking thing just changes. Yeah. And he's like, how are you guys doing? Good day.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine the guy, that the guy is he certainly carries a reputation with him, even to this day. I mean,
well, there was jokes in, and I asked him about that, not knowing that was probably in politics to do. I asked him and said, hey, people are calling you Kevin 2 weeks now because they're saying that that's how long you have to live in each, he said, I'm not going to flip out on you as bad as I flipped out on DiCaprio, but you can't rat on a rat, and that's stuck. He's still, he goes hither and yon, does whatever he wants to do, and nobody's bothering him. So, especially now that, he calls him Jimmy. That Jimmy is dead. A lock and a sock. That was a tough way to go. But I guess out of all the people who deserved it, he deserved it. There was a funny section where he was like, he says, we're driving in the car, and he pretty much says, look, I didn't kill anybody. I just, buried the bodies or moved the bodies, as the case may be. But I think he kind of thought it through. Like, if you're thinking that I didn't kill anybody because I'm a pussy, you're wrong. And so he doesn't share that. He doesn't share that part with me. He jumps right to, if Jimmy had asked me to kill you.
You kind of got to do it. Yeah.
I gotta do it, bro. And in that moment, which I think I tried to write about, but in that moment, you could just feel, the hair on the back. Like, there was no question. There was no question that that would be the case, right?
Yeah. And you also brought up, and I've heard it deemed many different things. You refer to it in the book as jailhouse rock. Another thing that I've heard it called, and it is associated a lot with the Black culture, and I'm sure you've probably heard the term too, 52 blocks.
Yeah, 52 blocks, yeah.
Now, how much stock do you put in that as a martial art?
Hey, man, it's just close quarter combat. It's really close quarter combat, and it's an art. And we've seen some of it happen with some of these Russian kind of promotions where they've got guys fighting in phone booths,
right,
or car jujitsu where people are fighting in cars. It's legitimate, man. And I was looking, when I was writing the book, I was looking for somebody who could lay a claim to its legitimacy. And I found one guy who's lives on the reservation up in Reno, James Painter, and he is the real deal. And he said, is being inside prison is like anywhere else. All the guys who were in the martial arts in prison all like start hanging, and started working on techniques and stuff. So this was mostly West Coast, and I found an East Coast guy who, with the 52 blocks, and it was the 52 blocks East Coast version was they're both close quarter combat, but was more kind of like Wing Chun to me. It felt like, right? And I think very possibly it has to do with like, I don't know, man, older prisons that are smaller, built for smaller people. Because James Painter's, rock and roll stuff, he was using the wall to launch himself off of, as well as using, running the pipe, using a lot of like leg drags that just don't appear in the East Coast version of it. So, I mean, I know the guy who the knife fighter whose section of the fight book got me banned in England. He now has a training institute not too far from where I am, and he has a cage. He has a cage in it, and as part of, he trains people for security operations, mercs, whatever you want. You sharpen your skills, you can go, and he puts people in the cage, and it's like, you got to get out of the cage. The first one who gets out gets his diploma. So it's like, and it's interesting. The cage, it's as you might imagine a cage to be, but it looks like a closet. It's about as big as a closet, a little bigger than a closet. But the gate to get out is not one that you could easily gain access to. Like, if I come into this room, I'm walking through a door. I'm standing upright.
Right.
The gate, the gate door for this room, this cell, is like, it's like maybe 3 feet off the ground, right? So to get in it, you've got to get down on your hands and knees and crawl into it. So they're making sure that for you to get out of it, the opponent has got to be, he has given up in the most thorough way possible, because there's no way he's letting you out. If it's diploma with 3 feet, you just can't jump to the other side. You have to get on your knees and crawl out.
Right.
So the fight's up here, the fight's here, and then the fight's on the ground. It was pretty intense. I was really wanting to get in that cage. And like a lot of the articles I write, I participate in them, like when I challenged Cain Velasquez to a fight and so on. Right. But I couldn't get anybody to go in the cage. I mean, we didn't go there during class time. And I probably got a good sense that there was that they weren't going to let some journalist roll in there, get in that cage, and let him get out of the cage. Like, I was going to put in some real work to get out of that cage. So
because Cain Velasquez does probably have a reputation to uphold. You know what I mean? So he's probably gonna, it probably would have been a real fight then, correct?
Oh, it was a real fight with Cain too. There was a point at which they said, they explained it to him. He's a journalist. He's writing. Was a challenger. Okay. And there was a point at which I tried something because, I think I was probably a blue belt then, but I tried something that displayed that I had some sort of understanding of what was going on.
Right.
And you could actually see Cain kind of sit back and go,
oh, you know what you're doing. Well, yeah.
Oh, bro. It was it was absolute misery after that.
Well, when you're talking about, when you talk about guys like that, you're talking about real fighters. But I'm curious to get your opinion when you see like somebody who, and I've had plenty of fighters on here before who have a great amount of, disdain for this concept. But then some of them do say that it's good for the sport. But what do you think when you see these people like Jake Paul? It's almost like they're coming in and they're, playing boxing. And sometimes they're even able to get ranked, but at the end of the day, they're YouTubers though. Do you think it kind of shits on the sport a little bit when someone can come in and make big money for these fights, when some of these guys have been doing this since they were little kids and working their way up through the ranks? Or do you think that ultimately those kind of fights are good for combat sports?
Well, at first I hated them. But then I understood that what was happening was that this is the benefit of free market, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can jump up, or and I call them ifs, influencer fighters. If you can jump up, rent out a gym, get some TV crew in there, and get them to pay you $10 million to do a fight, why not?
Right.
Why not? And the fact that they're legitimate, let's put the legitimate fighters who can't make that kind of money, that's a criticism of the sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so where he really distinguished himself and emerged from my hatred of my initial hatred of him was he was actually out there in a very serious way militating for increased fighter pay. I don't care if it was work, if he didn't have any real interest in just, I'm going to be a crusader. He was doing something that nobody else could do, right? A fighter that makes less was not going to do that because they don't want to rock the boat. A fighter that's making more doesn't need to do that because they already got this. Fighters at the same level, man, they don't have enough sway, and they're not enough of them. So when he's not been doing it so much in boxing, but what he's done to MMA by holding Dana White's feet to the fire has been God's work. Yeah. Somebody needs to do it, and nobody's going to do it. There's no way that the UFC should be getting away with paying 17%, except for the fact that it's America. I can pay if I have an event in which you are being paid to eat dog shit, and you're willing to do it for 17%. Why not?
Right.
Except in my mind, you know what? There's a certain. I don't know. Ethically, it bothers me. Right.
Well, you do make a good point, because I have read numerous articles where a lot of these UFC guys now are trying to segue into boxing because they just didn't make a lot of money in UFC. Even guys with long storied careers.
Yeah.
They're not as well off as you would think.
Yeah. Well, and now the saddest thing that I can't even say to go too deeply into it without getting choked up is like, I don't want to see Tim Sylvia and Mark Coleman do the slap fighting thing. I think it's the fact that these guys in their dotage have to do this shit at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to, sometimes somebody said, you want to learn about somebody, you got to listen to people and actually believe what they say.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they're not really fucking around. So when Dana White gets out there and says, this is not a long-term career, you should know he's pre-notifying you of his intent to fuck you over.
Yeah. Sure.
So if you can live with it like a hobby, like Stipe Miocic does, good for you. But know that you got to have a job that has health insurance. Know that you got to have some other, tangible plan to take care of your family. It's hard. And that's why you've been seeing these guys who compete getting younger and younger. This guy Rodriguez, who just lost his fight, 18-year-old phenom. It's like, yeah, come on. What did you pay that guy with? Twinkies?
Right.
17% is colossally. Look, I used to paint houses and move furniture, right? And my job in the painting the exteriors was power washing. So that was my deal. I'd be the power washer, come in with goggles, boom, the whole place. And at one point, I was working on a house for 2 or 3 days. I was being paid $300 to power wash the house. And I was like, yeah, this lady, she was giving us a hard time. How is she paying for this anyway? Well, she told me what she was paying for the job, which was like $3,000. I was like, yo, I'm getting $300. And then the guy was like, he goes, hey, I got the job. And at first I was like a little pissed off, and I was like, yeah, he's right. He got the job, and he offered me the job without a gun. Said, do you want to do this for $300? And I said, yeah, sure. So took the money, stopped complaining. Next job, however, maybe not, may exercise some choice. Right. But it takes two to tango in this fucked up world. But 17% is still shitty at Jake Paul. It's the influencer fighters who start as real fighters who become influencers that I have a problem with. And I'm talking about a Shane O'Malley, or a Patty Pimlet, or some of these guys where you can feel like Sage Northcutt, or whatever the guy's name, where they were trying to develop these guys because of their influencer power without them having like Sugar Shane O'Malley should not be fighting for the fucking belt.
Right.
He lost. I don't, but whatever. He's got his product line. He's got his brand. He's got the to me, that's worse of a scam than anything that Jake Paul is doing. Right.
It's almost like they latch on to the most marketable guys.
Yeah, he didn't beat Petrian either. So
right. I agree with you there.
Let's not. This is the jungle making decisions for you, and by the jungle, I mean the front office at the UFC.
Well, you obviously hear a lot in all sports, not just combat sports, but you hear a lot of people throw around the GOAT word. He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT. Do you have a GOAT in mind in combat sports, whether it be UFC or boxing? Who's that guy that you put up on that pedestal and say, wow, he set the bar really high?
I got two. For boxing, of course, it's Sonny Liston. And you maybe read Nick Tosh's book. I used to work out in my gym out in Brooklyn with one of Sonny Liston's sparring partners. So this a couple of things. And I talked to Howard. He used to take photos for me when I was doing this magazine in Los Angeles. Howard Bingham, who was the one who was there that night, took photos of Ali and Liston, both of those fights.
Okay.
And so I asked him, I go, what do you think about this Phantom Punch? He goes, no, it was legitimate. It was legitimate. And then I talked to Liston's sparring partner who says, no way, it's not at all legitimate. There's no way that Ali did this. No, not a single way. But, you got to understand that, you got to understand they work for different people.
Right. Right.
But who Liston worked for was very different from the people that Ali worked for.
Right.
And Ali's people were looking out for him. Liston's people didn't give a fuck about him. So
right. Yeah.
He was he is my boxing go-to, and for MMA, of course, it's John Jones. I don't think that I still never get the sense that he's actually, even the tough fights like against the Mauler, that he was digging down more than 50%.
Yeah. I know. I got myself so hyped up, and I went with my son to watch the local movie theater here. Actually showed his big a couple weeks back there, his big entry into the heavyweight division. And sometimes on fight day I will watch like all access stuff or on stuff on YouTube to kind of get you pumped. In the Cyril Gane fight, I think I probably watched more hype stuff than the fight actually even fucking lasted.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, usually, what we were expecting was the old John, and what he liked to do, his typical modus operandi, was to beat you in the style that you were famous for.
Yeah.
Just because, right?
Right.
That's where the beef started out with Daniel Cormier. He went to some seminar. I was like, I bet I could take you down. He most certainly did do that when they rolled. So we're thinking, okay, against Cyril, he's going to try to do some stand-up. But you know what? It's an older John Jones. He's a pragmatist. He's never knocked anybody out.
Right.
We don't see knockout power in those hands. So why take a chance against some guy who's actually super athletic and really it's mixed martial arts? So that was a departure for me, that he didn't try to beat somebody in the style to which they are accustomed, but that he was so, like you said, this is guy, I don't know what you're thinking. It's a mismatch. And everybody knew it was a mismatch, but we all bought the wolf tickets just because we're glad to see him back. And it was an amazing, it wasn't accidental. They show him working on this stuff with Henry Cejudo, which seems like a mismatch, but it's actually a great match. I forget that he's a JUCO wrestler himself. So it was super sweet and totally expected if you think about it, right?
Yeah. Well, you do see people, because of all the different ways you can get beat inside the cage. You've obviously got the ability to throw elbows, to throw knees, to do takedowns, to do arm bars and chokes and all that stuff. Whereas in boxing, you don't have all those things at your disposal. So I think in boxing, it seems like it's looked at a little bit more these days, where a lot of these big fights don't seem to be getting made because it seems like these young guys are all considering or fearful of losing their O. That seems to epitomize the greatness. Like, you can't lose a fight. And I don't know if that's because of what Floyd Mayweather, because he left undefeated, and that seems to be, the template with everybody looks at their career at. But you can lose fights though, right? And still be great.
Yeah. It's actually gotten to the point where if I see some guys got a record with an O in it, I'm super skeptical, because I know guys who've gone into the UFC with records like that, and then when you scratch the surface a little bit, you find out that they've been fighting their former students. They've been fighting in like non-sanctioned. Just weird. It's like, how are you running up these numbers?
Right. Just beat up the janitor in the building and counting that as a W.
So, and I think Mayweather's done a disservice by actually making that the focus. And if you think look, somebody once told me, I had one of my spies inside of John Jones's camp, and he said, you got to understand that Jones it's rare for Jones to fight a fight that he thinks he's really going to lose.
Right.
Which means he is actually carefully picking his opponents.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it, but that's just the nature of heavyweight. I mean, who's he going to fight in heavyweight? That's going to,
right.
That's the nature. Like they have Sergey Pavlovich as an alternate. That guy, I'm the only one on this Don't Care preview that we do on Bloody Elbow. I'm the only one that called the fight for Sergey because I see something in his hands. And they're like, oh, Curtis has hands too. I go, not like this.
Yeah.
So that Blades was knocked out. It was not a surprise at all. I just called everybody like I told you. So you don't hear Jones talking about him, and it doesn't make sense for him to be talked about because it's like, guy's got no juice. Why am I lifting all this money to put money in your pocket where you bring nobody to the fight some more guys, develop a name like he did already. Now he's got this thing behind him. The last 8 fights won by knockout. He's broken this record. Nobody's knocked out that. It's okay. Now we're getting somewhere. But with that 85-inch reach, Jones is not going to trade blows with him. He's not going to do that. So but the guy's a Sambo guy, so we'll see. But Sambo against Greco-Roman, don't know. Not when slashing elbows are involved. I don't know.
What was the first thing that really got you really on fire for combat sports though? Was it the first thing that you really kind of delved into? Like, was it a movie? Was it a book on combat? What was the first thing that you really remember getting your hands on or seeing or reading?
Well, outside of Ring magazine, which was I wasn't able to read at 5 years old, so that was not something I was consuming. But I would have to say being taken to see Five Fingers of Death, and then on my birthday, 1972, I think, that being taken to see Enter the Dragon. Yeah. So all credit and tribute due to Bruce Lee, who I knew already from the Green Hornet. Like that was, that's when I started getting Black Belt magazine. That's when I started buying everything on Bruce Lee I could find. That's when I started to realize, okay, oh shit, you can actually study this stuff. That kind of stuff that he does, people train to do that stuff. I finally made that connection, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, Bruce is a really interesting guy because the whole concept of the whole Jeet Kune Do thing was really, he was pretty critical even of the martial arts, all the traditional stuff. Even back then, the Tao of Jeet Kune Do is pretty much just him breaking down all the arts and kind of taking what he deemed in his mind most useful.
Yep. And that's the way, if you've ever been in any kind of scuffle, that's the way this shit works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I started doing, maybe, when was it? It was probably 2000, 2001, where somebody from Neurot Records actually said, hey, we found this online. You thought you might be interested. And it was like some weird thing buried in Craigslist about underground MMA. So, of course, I call and I go, and that was the first thing that dawned on me. It's much faster than any singular discipline, simply because you have so many disciplines in the okay, I can't, gonna slip a punch and right across jab. Okay, that's all we're doing.
Right.
All right. Now a guy level changes, and I got to deal with he's now so the benefit of mixed martial arts for me was that it was as close to a real. The playing field was constantly shifting, and it was like I think from going from NCAA football to professional football, it was much faster. And it was it was even faster than street fights I've been in, because street fights fundamentally usually have people who don't really want to fight who are fighting. Right. With early MMA, MMA now, you have people who know how to fight who really want to fight, and that's totally different. So fast.
Now, when you talk about street fighting, and I think people out there watching would as you mentioned, most people go out of their way for the most part to try to avoid a fight or avoid violence. But when people inevitably end up in a street fight, and you as somebody who's had street fights, what would you tell somebody? Because the big thing that I hear about people that have been in street fights, or even thinking about the idea of being in a street fight, a lot of it, and you might be able to elaborate on this more as a martial artist. Controlling your emotions when you go into a street fight is obviously very difficult. A lot of guys telegraph the same move. They want to instantly take your head off with that first punch, and heart rates are going. How do you keep your composure in a street fight?
Somebody once, these guys, I used to do a seminar up in Truckee, this thing called Masters of the Mountains. And you could do some of it's on YouTube, where you get guys from Eskrima, Silat, Sistema, all these different disciplines. And one of the guys, we did this knife fighting drill, and so you had blanks, they called them. So these were knives that you could, real knives, but unsharpened. Right. So the guy said, "Okay, Eugene, go out. I want you to come up those stairs, and then come in the door, and we'll just see what happens." So I go out the room, I come up the stairs, I open the door, I go in, and I'm attacked by a guy with a knife, right?
Okay.
And he's starting to stab me with this knife, right? And I think, oh, it's a demonstration. Like, I've spent 10 years in, bullshit karate. I thought it was going to be a demonstration. No, he was really trying to break my fucking ribs with this knife. I mean, it wasn't cutting, but every time he hit me with it, it hurt. So you fight like with it, you just start to fight a little bit differently. And I asked him about it later. He goes, "Yeah, man." And it's something I've heard since. He goes, we train hard so we can fight easy. So, I mean, the last few scuffles I've gotten into on the street, I would venture a guess that my heart rate didn't raise very much at all, right? I mean, certainly the cardio output wasn't more significant than what I do every day with jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And it didn't last 6 minutes, which is how long my round is in jiu-jitsu. It lasted about 30 seconds. So, but I think generally, I think you should avoid them for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons.
Right.
In other words, if you avoid a physical confrontation and that's going to bug you for the next 10 years, then don't avoid it. It's better to either get your ass kicked or get in there and then deal with it. But in this, there's also another calculation given if you live in the US of A, firearms. This is something to be considered. And I'm less afraid of firearms than I actually am with my daily carry, which is a knife, right? So they did that great drill where they gave like a 12-year-old girl the magic marker, and a guy a gun, and said go, and then they stopped 30 seconds later. The guy had all these magic marker. If those had been a knife, you'd have been dead, and she's 12.
Yeah.
So, but generally, it's weird. I mean, the last scuffle thing I got into was maybe about 2.5 months ago, right? And this is when I just had surgery on my. I shouldn't have been stupid. I had surgery on my leg. I'm out there in San Francisco with my kid, and they just repealed this jaywalking thing. So, there's a red light. Some cars are zooming toward the red light. I think I could cross now. He's going to slow down anyway. So we slow down and we get on the sidewalk, and, maybe they were having a bad night. Whatever. They were just like, get the fuck out of the street. And I just got that New York, overreactive Brooklyn shit. Flip the fuck out. And but then it got bad, right? They're like, come over here. I go, you come over here. They go, come over here. You come over here. Now I'm armed with a gun, right? And a knife. I don't want to, my kid, she's 22, but she's 24, but she doesn't need to be seeing her father. Right. She's going to shoot somebody over. And even, okay, so I said, I'm not going to shoot somebody. We're just going to, I'm going to have a fist fight with somebody, and then the gun fucking fall. I mean, it's just stupid shit. I just should have walked across. You get the fuck out of the street. Go, yeah, okay, good job. Just going.
Right.
But you can't. I wasn't. Maybe it was the leg thing. I'm walking with a cane,
right.
So maybe it was a sense of sense of vulnerability. But I think that was a failure for me as a father at that point. I was not proud of myself for doing that. But it just shows you, even somebody who's trained like me, who's usually a pretty even-tempered guy, it seemed random and unjust. I'm just crossing the street, man. You got to stop at this light anyway. It cost you 8 feet? Fuck off.
Right.
So.
What's the common misconception people or a common mistake that that people seem to repeatedly make in street fights? Obviously, I mentioned a lot of guys, they go for that big knockout punch instantly, they telegraph it, whatever. Is that the biggest thing?
The biggest thing, well, yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is a kind of a certain situational awareness, but the biggest thing in my mind is not reading the room right.
Okay.
And there have been, like, I'll give you an example. I'm walking in San Francisco with two pro fighter friends, all right? And in total, I was the biggest guy of this trio, right? I mean, I'm 6'1", there's probably 240 back then.
Yeah.
And walking down the street and bump into some, I think they were, the fact that I know post facto what they were, it gives you some kind of foreshadowing as how the story is going to go.
Right.
They were University of California, Berkeley football players. And they bump into the two pro fighters who were smaller fighters, the lightweight fighters, the lightweight, middleweight guys, bump into them. And they thought about it, got a few feet and was like, hey, excuse you.
Yeah, that old, yeah, heard that a few times.
And so I turn around and the fighter guys, the pro fighter guys I'm with, don't even turn around. And then the football players think that the fact that they haven't turned around means that they're scared. Goes, yo, I'm fucking talking to you. And at that point, I turn around and I go to sit on a parked car. And that should have been their tip-off.
Yeah.
The biggest guy in the group is just sitting this one out. You should have known. And when the two pro fighters realized that they were being spoken to, without breaking pace, we're walking forward, they just turn around. And it was over. It was like really like about 13 seconds. One guy was knocked out on the ground, like snoring, and then the other guy was choked out, and it not more than 30 seconds. And the third guy looks and he's like, sorry. and the fighters just pretty much turned and kept going. And I stood off the car and rushed to catch. They weren't even talking about it afterward. Right. They weren't. And these guys,
big deal to them.
No, it was just like, like, oh, look at that cute dog. What I mean. So these guys, these football players really, really, really misread the room. And when they turned around finally, after saying, hey, I'm talking to you, and they turned around, they should have seen it in their eyes. And that's what I'm doing at this point in time. There's so many people that train. I'm going to think, at this point, the only way I can reasonably tell is I can tell in the eyes.
Right. And there are a lot of people out there making videos, though, now, who are, who proclaim to say, hey, if someone comes up and get in your face, here's, I see the clickbait pop up all the time. You're always seeing these people that can, hey, I'll show you what to do to end any street fight in a matter of seconds. And, everyone's got these different moves, do this, do that, do that, do that. But, what is the best way to kick off a street fight if you're going to be into one? Now, that people say historically that they almost always end up on the ground because they can be kind of sloppy, especially when you're tussling around with untrained people, but what do you think, is that critical first move to make in a street fight?
Well, the last few that I've been into, I've been mindful of cell phones, and I've been mindful of legal repercussions.
Sure.
And I don't look like a guy who has anything, but in discovery, once shit goes to trial, they just make a determination of who's got more.
Right.
So if you've got more than some scumbag that you're fighting with on the street, then you become the guy that everybody turns to for cash. Right. So I like to actually tilt things in my favor, and that's and I'm sure any of these guys who in the street fight will not encourage this, and I don't think you should be encouraging street fighting anyway, but I would say my goal at a certain point is to have you strike me first.
Yeah
Right, because I know it's coming.
Right.
So I remember some guy was like, hey, and I go, oh, okay, so we're gonna have this discussion. I get super close to the guy. And so only the two of us can hear what we're saying. And I just start saying the foulest shit, which, the Jiu-Jitsu Academy I train at is like it's like the mafia gym that I used to train at in Brooklyn, where you can't be sensitive. You cannot, you're just going to have to take it. So I'm used to dishing out this kind of abuse, or having it dished on me just as a matter of course.
Right. And it's gonna elicit a response as well.
It's gonna elicit a response. And so I say something, and I can see the guy. I can see when his eyes go, and like and at that point, he goes, and he shoves me. So now we've established for all and sundry that I was assaulted. Right.
Right.
All we saw is Eugene said something to the guy, and the guy, boom, And so at that point, boom, I popped him, laid him down. And I was hoping he would stop. Again, I had a cane. I just had surgery on my knee from fighting with Kung Lee. So I shouldn't have been doing this anyway.
Right.
And then the guy jumps on my waist with his legs around my waist, which was like a gift to a grappler. So I get him in this thing called the ultimate head and arm, take him down, crucifix his right arm, and like, you're done. You're done. There's no, I could sit here for the rest of the night with you,
Right,
just stop. So if my thing is, if you feel safe enough to do it, maybe get the guy, get the guy to go on the one, which is great. If you have a planned counter, then you're Jake, you're fine.
Yeah.
Also what I find that I find useful is if I'm having crosswords with somebody, and this took me years to get to, and they start coming back to me, I don't let them get close. Usually when they get about 10 feet away, I go, I can hear you from there, which is my way of saying it's going to be an act of war if if you're 10 feet away and you close that next 5 feet, that's an act of war.
Yeah.
And you're going to put me in a situation where I'm forced to defend myself.
Right.
I would like to say, like Tom DeBlas just recently talked about the martial art of sprinting. I would like to say that is a smart way to do business, but I have not run from a fight ever. So I have avoided 2 fights, and those have haunted me, that I'd actually done so, but
what is it exactly mentally as a fighter that haunts you? Do you feel like, is it emasculating? Do you feel like I should have confronted these people? Like, what is it psychologically that makes you, lament over these fights that you didn't have?
It's how the functioning of fear. I mean, I've lived my whole life, as an exercise, like bad shit that's happened to me right after it.
Right.
I typically have said to myself, that's never going to happen again. Like never. Right. Like those 20 guys who attacked me in the park, I go, okay, that was fucked up. That's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
And in other words, I've taken serious precautions to make sure stuff like the one-time event. Okay, you got me one time.
Right.
Okay, but this is not happening again. So, I know, I don't know. The streets are weird now because also I know a guy who went to prison for 6 years. He has a girlfriend. She gets off the phone. She's hysterical. What's wrong? My sister's being beaten up by her boyfriend, the husband. I don't know. She said, we got to go rescue her. So he goes, okay, good. They go over there. Now, my guy's a small guy. He's like maybe 5'7", 145, 150 pounds.
Yeah.
The boyfriend is like me, 6'2", but he's like, 220, and he's fucked up. He's drunk. So what are you going to do? You're gonna blah, blah, blah. And he's clearly been beating her up, and he's, and so he comes for it. My dude pulls out a knife and is like, just stand back. We want her to get her stuff. You're not going to do anything with it. And he comes and he falls. Guy dies.
Ooh.
So he calls the cops. He tries to do CPR. Calls the cops. Cops show up. What happened? They arrest him, take him to court. And the trial hinged on what happened then. What they're asking you to go through it. He goes, well, I grabbed my wallet, grabbed my keys, grabbed my knife. And we go, whoa. What did you grab? Just my wallet, my keys, my knife. So that knife was yours. Yeah. You left the house with it and went into a situation you knew to be volatile. Well, I didn't know. It's just, it was part of what I didn't care. Involuntary manslaughter, 6 years in fucking jail.
Wow.
Right. If that happened today, that guy would have been fully exonerated. But back then in the 80s, whatever, he was, if he had said, I don't know where the knife came from, I knocked it from his hand, I found it on the floor. So these are things that you have to consider in this day. Like, what are the circumstances under which I can legitimately shoot somebody? Do I want to, you know what? I just want to go in the grocery store and get some water.
Right. You're right.
So, I mean, it forces you to really do long, hard thinking about who you're going to cross swords with, for how long and for why. And reality of it is most of us don't need to do this shit at all. The things that haunt me were situations in which I 100% motivated by fear. And this was super subtle. Like, I'm walking with my roadie at the time. This was 81, 82. And I'd stopped lifting weights for a period of time, hurt my back. And I had gone down to maybe, I don't know, it was 170 pounds, 175 pounds. So we're walking along in Minneapolis. And some dude is just like mad. Like, he's like, almost, I can feel he's about to slap her. She's got like a rainbow colored mohawk. Not big shit now. In 1982 was a deal.
Yeah.
So I'm being Prince Valiant. I'm like Mad Dog at him. He's like, and then I feel the shadow kind of come over me. And I look up, and it's clearly a guy who's with the other guy who's like 6'5", like 255 pounds. And I look up and see this big powerlifting gym that I happen to be standing in the front of, that they've just come out of. And I'm looking at this big guy who's now completely fixated on me. And I just kind of go,
yeah.
I just looked away. It was super subtle. She, if you were to ask her this, her name is Amy Kimes. She used to sing for that band Nausea. If you were to ask her about this, she has no memory of this. No, absolutely no memory. It just didn't on a woman's scale, whatever. She just didn't even, she didn't see the first guy. She didn't see the second guy. She didn't see what I was doing. She was completely, but the fact that I fucking looked away, it's just, you know, there's a time I've written about before where the mafia enforcer guy in my gym tried to kill me. And I took a suck on that one. That one I don't feel bad about. I was 16 years old. Yeah. This guy was a leg breaker for the mafia. He was probably about 24, outweighed me by about 80 pounds, and he was in the middle of a roid rage. Nah, man. I was okay taking a suck on that one. That one in front of the gym, that's bugged me for years. Still.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you mess with the mob guy, you end up in a hole covered in lime.
Well, the thing is, nobody in that gym would have stopped it. They would have felt, you know, they would have expressed some sorry. Oh, Eugene, I'm sorry, you got fucked up, man. You know, they would have used that line that is typically used in that situation where people say, it happened so fast. Right. I asked the guy the guy said, hey, you know, he said it happened so fast. He was like, man, they beat me with pool cues for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's not fast. Yeah. This stuff, I would just, in my mind, better get my ass beaten on that street. She would have remembered it, but it wouldn't have been like a canker that bothers me 30, 40 fucking years later, you know?
Now, what about the, we always hear about, phrases like, you know, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog. You know, in your mind, you've mentioned your own size. I believe that my size has certainly been a deterrent. I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. You know, it certainly weighs in people's minds when they look at you and they size you up. But do you believe that one is more of an advantage over the other? You know what I mean? Like, you'll hear a lot of people in the fight game say, you know, a bigger guy always beats a smaller guy. But is that always really the case?
Oh, no. I mean, every step of my martial arts journey, I've been impressed upon by people who were smaller than me. Like when I first started taking Muay Thai, I was like, yeah, it's bullshit. You know, he goes, yeah, okay. Why don't you spar with Vin over there? And Vin was this Vietnamese guy. He was like 5'2", 135 pounds. Yeah. And he hit me with some Boer Bondo kick. And I just watched my muscle in my thigh spasm from top. It was like somebody opening a shade and pulling down the shade. Yeah. And that's where I was like, where do I sign? Where do I sign up? Yeah. Or alternatively, my boxing coach, one day I was just being kind of a dick. You know, it happens, right? And I knew I was in trouble when my boxing coach said, get your mouthpiece. Okay. I was like, yeah, whatever, Pops. He was older than me, you know. I put in my mouthpiece and we're pop, 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 pop. Bam. And he hits me with a body shot. And that it was like getting hit by a car. And it was so fucking effective. And this is me, years of boxing at the boys club, and, you know, but it was so effective. I never went back.
Yeah. Lesson learned.
And I see the guy, he lives a few blocks from me now. I'm sure he doesn't remember me. He's still, you see him now, he's like an older black guy, but I remember that punch clearly. I remember him. I drive by him every day when I'm going out there. It's like, fuck. The only thing that drives me crazy is I want to know what I said to piss him off. I don't know what it was, but I could tell when he got to the mouthpiece part that I'd said, I just maybe being kind of a fresh mouth kid. I don't know, but that's how good it was. I was like, I'm gonna focus on karate. Fuck this boxing.
Yeah. Well. Speaking of people being pissed off,
And he was old and small. To address your point, he was 100 times out of 100. If I said, "Hey man, let's get into a fight, let's fuck," you would pick him as a guy to fuck with.
A victim.
That's one thing that, not so much a victim, but just he's not going to give me that much trouble. And that's one thing that martial arts has taught me. It's like, you never know. Right. You never know. You know, I'm a tough guy, but you know what? I'm probably not beaten. You know, I might have a hard time really with Henry Cejudo. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you know? Yeah. So,
well, Bruce Lee famously, I mean, certainly not a large man at all, you know, by any means, you know, certainly a small guy. So, you know, you write in the book about you know, the Mike Tyson Holyfield ear biting incident. You know, in your assessment, what went on there? You know, I mean, like, what possesses somebody like Mike Tyson to do that? Now, he claimed he was getting headbutted a lot. Is that frustration? Is that the street side of him coming out and handling things that way? What was your assessment when that went down? And I know that was a long time ago or whatever, but you did write about it in the book, and it obviously is a huge you know, stain and or a memory, you know, in the landscape of boxing. But you know, how did you see it, and what do you think motivated Mike to do that?
Two things happened. I watched the fight. I was in San Francisco at a bar, Irish bar.
Me too.
The fight.
I watched it.
Two things happened. The first thing that happened was that it was a product of frustration and a response to what he felt was dirty boxing. He was being headbutted.
Yep.
Right. But the frustration was born out of being headbutted and not being able to get off. You know, it was fucking with his rhythms, and it was a drag. It was her, you know, it was fucking, they've known each other since forever. They have a long-standing relationship prior to that. That was the first time. I was shocked that they gave him a bye on that first time. The second time was, I'm done. If boxing had some version of MMA tap out, that's what the second time, when they says you do it again, you're done, and you do it again, you're just trying to get out of it. So there were two events, but you know, this was styles make fights. Okay, I got you. It was just going to be a tough fight for him, and for a lot of different reasons. One, fighting people that you know is always fundamentally different in weird, unexpected ways. Yeah, like they know you, so they're not afraid of you, and if they like you, then that's a little, you know, you kind of pull you. I've competed against guys, some teammates. I was like, oh, this would be pretty mellow. Dude gets out there, becomes a different animal. He's trying to murder me. I was like, bro, we just had lunch together. But so from my point of view, I was underestimating, and he's overestimating. So I think that there were a lot of different things that happened. I would never call it a stain on boxing. It's hard to use that with boxing, but it's I call it the red light district of sports. Yeah. You know, there's so many more horrible things have happened, from, you know, Jack Dempsey being the raper in house for the mob, you know, when they wanted to bring women into the whorehouses and break them in. It's endless, the amount of shit that has happened. And this guy who I knew, who was Sonny Liston's sparring partner, indeed, he lost his job when he murdered somebody. I go, what the fuck happened? And he goes, well, we were going to go train in the gym. Some guy is leaning in his car being salty with the women. I told him to shut his fucking mouth. The guy was like, oh, go fuck yourself. And so he starts walking toward the car. And, you know, this guy, the sparring partner, it was Liston's sparring partner. Right. So he's big. So the guy starts walking toward the car, and the dude starts rolling the window up like, fuck you. He punches the guy through the window, right? Yeah. But the guy's head gets cut on the broken glass. Oh. You know, and starts bleeding out. And then this is where things get strange. I said to the guy, so what happened then? The guy's telling me this. I'm 16. This guy's telling me the story. He said, well, I applied pressure. You know, so I said, you were trying to stop bleeding. He was like, with my foot. Oh shit. So the guy died, and at that point they decided that, you know, that it was tough enough a sale with Liston alone without having, you know, he didn't go to jail for it. You know, it was an accidental death. This guy was a white guy. It was an accidental death, and I don't think they're going to put him in jail for that. But a white guy back in the no, right. He just wasn't going to go to jail for that. But but it would ended his days as Sonny Liston's sparring partner. So,
and I have to say, as somebody that works in healthcare myself, my day job is a nurse. That applying pressure with the foot, not the way to go there.
There you go. So yeah. So I don't know. I mean, boxing has been. It was part of the evolution of Mike Tyson, and they have reconciled and they're friendly these days. And when I interviewed Holyfield, he was not upset about the ear. He was more upset about the allegations that he was cheating. But then he pulled his punch, so to speak, by saying, it was interesting. He neither confirmed nor denied the headbutting, but said the ref didn't say anything.
Right.
Yeah, I got you. It's not cheating if you don't get caught, right?
Well, and Holyfield certainly is very well known for having that that head that's like a cast iron fucking pan. I mean, we saw when he butted heads with Rockman, he pretty much grew another head out of his forehead. Right. I mean, he's got a very, very hard head. So I mean,
yep. Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, in all martial arts, it's funny that, and this is something I'm sure probably Gus D'Amato or somebody who, who actual boxing coaches, but the use of your head is pretty significant. It's almost depending on the head work. It's not just for avoiding punches, but actually setting stuff up. Is pretty. That's one of the Tai Domi section of the book. I like that he had thought this through. Yeah. He was like, "There's no circumstance under which my left hand doesn't know where my right hand is."
Right.
So I know if I bury my my left hand in your collar, my eyes could be closed. As a smaller fighter, I gotta do this. My eyes are closed. All I have to do is put my fists together, right?
Yeah.
Because I know your head is between them.
Right.
So,
Right.
Boom, hockey style, looking away. So. It's just interesting. Yeah, but I mean, if you know how to fight, the reality of it is fighting people who don't know how to fight is not interesting at all. Yeah. Zero level of interest. I mean, this recent thing with Nick Diaz where he chokes this guy out in New Orleans, which he's now turned himself into the police for. It's not like he does it with much enthusiasm. And the guy that he chokes out is like a blue belt and actually has an MMA career of some 12 some odd fights. Yeah. It's just like kind of gently lets the guy down and goes about his business. It's no fun. It's no fun. Now, I mean, what's usually the case, I remember when I got into this street fight with these two guys in Portland, Maine. And the guys were like, at first, when I realized it was, what the fuck are you laughing at? And I realized they were talking to me. I just started smiling. I think I actually said to them, I go, out of all the people on this sidewalk tonight, you think it's the best to do it with me, right? This is
I lost your camera there.
Oh, sorry. Here, somebody called me. Let me put it back on. There I am.
There you go. Okay, go ahead. You're Portland, Maine, fighting two guys. Yep.
Right, guys, and the guy said, "What the fuck are you laughing at?" And I just said, "I think I can't believe that of all the people here, that you think I'm the best one to do this with." Yeah, that blows my mind. In actual fact, and I could see him thinking with his animal brain because I was the only black guy there, and so I guess he thought, all these white folks gonna stand up for me. I guess he didn't know that they had just come from my show,
right?
They weren't going to stand up for you for shit, Jack. So,
well, and I'm glad you brought up your show, because I'd like your take on the correlation between the music that you make and your fascination with combat and how those two kind of intersect with each other. Like we've obviously seen, and I'm certainly not saying you're a volatile front man, but we've seen people like G.G. Allen, Henry Rollins has gotten physical with people in the crowd before. Have those two worlds intersected with you very much?
What do you mean, those people or the tendency to?
Yeah, the tendency for violence and it's spilling over into what you do musically.
Initially, but I've worked really hard to tamp that shit down. I've worked really hard because that's not why I'm leaving my house, right? That's why I'm separating myself from my family. I'm an artist, right? Right. So in that situation, you're either a friend of art or you're an enemy of art. Right. And I certainly welcome criticism, but not in the middle of my fucking show.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and if I can see you with it, I can see you within 5. You know, you're within 5 rows, or you know, you're throwing ice or cigarettes at me, or grabbing my testicles because you think you're going to get a positive response.
Right.
You're attempting to interfere with the creation of art, and you gotta stop. And the only place this was really happening was sort of the UK, because I think there was an obsession there with this idea of like, is he real? Is this real? Is he you know, is this a show? And you know, yeah, no, it's as real as any other interaction. If you walk to me on the street and grab my testicles as hard as you can and squeeze, you're gonna get fucking knocked out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So
normal response.
Yeah, and so just because I'm on stage and I have a microphone when it's happening doesn't mean I'm going to give you a how do you do, boy, and pat on the back. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So Rollins never actually got into tons of fights. He's got a few where he's threatening people.
Right.
But so that in mind, that becomes part of his stagecraft. But really, I just want to get to the end of the show. You know,
right.
Answering the dictates of my soul. If I'm fighting, I to a certain degree have acknowledged that I've failed. In fact, you know, there's one time when I just beat this guy up, and then, you know, I finished, and I look at the stage, and I think, you know what, the show's over.
Yeah.
And we hadn't finished the set. You know, there's sometimes when I've gotten back on, like in Belgium, it happened, and I got back on stage, and we finished the set. You know, we're not going to let you get it. But in this instance, I look back on the stage, and it was pretty clear. Show's done.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a drag. I didn't leave my house to go to Washington, D.C. to play a show and have that happen. So
Right. And now to shift away from the combat a little bit, though, when did you first get bit by the musical bug? Like, when did you know that wanted to be an avenue that you wanted to explore?
Oh, not for a long time, man. It was interesting. I mean, I've always done some version of stage work, right? I mean, the first thing I was like, won this big modeling contest when I was like 2 years old.
Look at you!
Yeah. Oh shit, man! I've got the photo here.
Young stud, a young Eugene S. Robinson when he was a stud, a young stud.
Yeah. Well, this is like 2 years old, bro. This is like even. I just cleaned out a bunch of my stuff, and I was like, I found these really old photographs, and I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So Gert's department store had this thing where they, you know, the best, like I won the best baby of the year. So I've been doing some version of modeling and like theater and shit like that since I was 2, literally. And and I don't think I thought about music in a serious way until, I don't know. I had friends in high school who were in bands. Oh, here we go. There.
Look at you. Look at that.
That was the award-winning photograph, man. So, but I think probably 1980. Yeah. I think I had seen enough punk rock at that point where I was like, I think I could fucking do this, you know?
Yeah. So, and I watched it, and you know, after I read the book, you know, I think what made me stumble across you as a musician, I was watching, and I've watched a bunch of them on YouTube, the New York Hardcore Chronicles, where you're asked about, you know, where you're asked about who the best slam dancer was, what your first show was, you know, kind of like a rapid fire question thing. And one thing that you ended it with, I think one of the better, they end all those things with a message to the youth.
Yeah, to the youth.
And yours was and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something to the effect of wishing you had utilized your time better when you were younger. And you know, you made mention of somebody like Roger from Agnostic Front, always looked like he was busy on a mission, going to do something, you know what I mean? Had an apron on, was going to work, wasn't just, you know, just leisurely hanging out. When you say that, like, what do you mean? Do you feel like you pissed away a lot of time when you were young?
Well, when you're younger, you know, there's a certain amount of hanging out that you do as you try to figure out your place in space.
Right.
You know, so your social media, right?
Right.
Like, how do I fit into this group? And, you know, in actual fact, I don't see that as being wasted time. If you were to ask me, okay, what did you do in July of 1982? I said, I went to a bunch of shows, hung out, got into some fights, whatever, you know.
There's life experience happening though. Right.
Yeah. These were developmental issues. I was talking to people about music. I was talking to people about art. I was putting things together in my head, you know, and watching other people do the same about how they want to approach music. I mean, one of the funny things that I think I talk about this in the memoir is being corralled by Rick Rubin and really wanting to get out of there because he's just like a blowhard. He's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm thinking, that's just never going to happen. But of course, I was aggressively wrong.
He's done a few things, though, Eugene. He's done a few things.
Hey, look, in the sidewalk in 1980, 81, standing on the Lower East Side between hookers and junkies, it didn't seem likely, you know.
Right, you didn't see it,
No, but like I'll give you a prime example. For a long time, from whether it's boxing or weightlifting or wrestling, or karate later, these were things I did a couple of times a week, right?
Yeah.
Like there you go. I would go weightlift Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I go to karate Tuesday, Thursday, you know, weekends, whatever, maybe go to shows, do nothing, hang out with my girlfriend. I don't know. And it wasn't until I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu where I was like, there's a lot to learn here. And realistically, I'm not getting better fast. How do I? Because you got to come every day.
Right.
Every day.
Yeah.
And then it becomes calculus. It's like, the more you do this, the better you get. It's really simple.
Yeah.
That's fucking simple.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that's what I mean about wasting my time. And so then when I stopped sleeping, you know, and started to do this, and I'm in a weird situation now where I'm really productive. I got the book, I got articles going. It's like Topo Gigio. I got all these plates spinning, and I can keep track of them. And there's a guy, I worked on this project with this guy, a farmer in Berlin, called Disco Interiors. It's a great project. But I gave the guy like 6 months. We recorded it in San Francisco. He mixed it. He got a mixer. So you got to find a label. And I'm dialed in for about 6 months. And then the dude just disappeared for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And 4 to 6 years. And he's recently come back. He's like, okay, I'm ready to go on this now. And I need you to write this thing. And I'm a writer. So I should be, but I just haven't been able to. It's like, man, that bus came and went. Where the fuck have you been?
Right.
I'm like, boom, 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 boom,
boom. Right. I was ready to get down to this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got all my vocals, you got all the lyrics, you got the record title, you got the photos. Sell the fucking thing.
Put the goddamn thing out already.
Yeah. Don't make it contingent on me having to write some magical thing for you. We're done. You know. And I think finally, like, he had a kid go off to college, and he's sitting around going, oh, now I have time. You know, I make the time. You know who gets cheated? I sleep less. You know, my oldest kid is 26. My youngest kid is almost 3. So you know, I'm not just stealing time away from them. My kid's napping now. That's why I'm doing this show.
Yeah. I remember those days. Now I'm in grandfather mode now, but I certainly remember those days. You know, but
I'm a grandfather too, man. It's great.
It is great. It really is great. It really is. So. As somebody who's outspoken and certainly has a lot of opinions, I certainly would be remiss in not asking. And you know, it may be old news, but it's still, you know, it shouldn't be pushed to the back burner and just swept under the rug. But you know, when we see in the 21st century the blatant murder right there on the street of George Floyd, as a black man yourself, what does that make you feel like? What did that, you know, what kind of feelings did that stir up in you, especially as a creative type? Did that make you want to write more? Did that make you want to, take up the cause, so to speak? But what did that instill in you? Because we did pretty much witness, you know, a murder, an execution of this man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nothing.
Because why? You've seen it for years.
If you went outside right now and you run back in and you say, oh my God, Eugene, I said, oh, what happened? You go, oh, this fucking dog bit me. I was like, yeah, dogs tend to do that.
Yeah.
There was a great response in Germany of some woman who had climbed into a polar bear tank and got mauled by a polar bear. And the Germans were very pragmatic about it. They said, if you climb in a polar bear tank, typically this can be expected to. They had no chill about this. If you do that, you're going to get fucked. My mother was a cop. I've had other family friends who are cops. I trained trained with cops. But the reality of it is, you know, they've been treating people in low-income neighborhoods like shit forever, and they're not going to stop. And it's not just, you know, it is, you know, like MDC said, you know, army of the fucking rich. It's not, you know, people, my cop friends go, oh, you don't understand. I go, yeah, but, you know, crime in low-income neighborhoods, yeah, you know what? Guys who drive Mercedes-Benzes are never getting treated like this. Right. So I see this as being a modified class warfare, because there are a couple of scenes after that where somebody, in the name of being fair and balanced, the kid down in Long Beach who is bipolar and, you know, white kid got beaten to death by, you know, Latino cops. I mean, I'm not going to get caught in identity politics of it. You know, these are aggressive abuses of power that are made significantly worse given, you know, just the American structure and how we approach business. So, yeah, am I going to look at it as just an identity issue, that this is a part and parcel of how badly Black people are treated in America, right? Or am I going to look at it as a class issue? Well, this is part and parcel of how badly poor people or people, you know, without obvious means are being treated. Or is it more a case of out of control policing? I don't know. My first and most immediate response was, I'm leaving America.
Yeah.
and I am. I actually am.
You are.
What I was doing right before I called you was wrangling with some people in the UK and in Spain over, you know, it's a whole process. So I'm going to Spain. And I'm trying to move what little I have from there. I mean, there are lots of little, lots of, like, they don't have the same gun laws. So clearly I've got to try to, you know, this is just all like driver's license and all this shit. But by this time next year, I should be gone. Should be gone.
Good for you if that's what makes you happy. Absolutely, yeah.
Hey, listen, man. Spain made it through World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and outside of that thing with Franco, you know, it's been a pretty easy place. And I just, you know, I'm just not digging on. I'm tapping out on the whole American thing.
I hear you.
I mean, again, like, I'm never armed. I mean, I'm never not armed.
Right.
So if you see me out and I'm going to 7-Eleven, you see me out in the store, you should know that I'm carrying a Walther with me and a knife. Right. This is just long-standing. I used to have a federal firearms license, got a concealed carry permit. It's like, this is a way to live. If I'm walking out with my 3-year-old, I'm fucking armed. Is this a way to live?
I know. You raise a great question. I know you really do. It's a scary world. You almost feel like you know, especially out with the kids, you almost feel like it's your duty. You know, I mean, you know, I mean, the world has become that type of place. I mean, it's pretty scary. So you know, the music landscape, obviously, to put the focus on music a little bit, has changed so much over the years. Where it's become, and I talked to a lot of musicians on here too, where very tough to make some real money nowadays with the streaming platforms. And one thing, when we started talking and we're setting this interview up, one thing that I did love that you said was, if we were going to be discussing OXBOW, you wanted to have the whole band on. So I take it that your mindset is very much like, you know, a band is like a gang or a family.
Well, no, that was instituted by the guitar player who was like, listen, I understand the benefits of a front man. He didn't actually say this to me because he doesn't communicate very well, but I understand the benefits of a front man. But, you know, maybe they should actually talk to somebody who wrote the fucking music. Right.
I get that. Okay.
And you know what? I had a hard time refuting an argument that he didn't make, but that was essentially the argument.
Right.
And I also was mindful of the fact that as a journalist, which is how I make my money, that there was a limited appeal to the newness of a story that involved just another interview with me.
Right.
So I was like, if we're going to be speaking primarily about OXBOW or whatever, then I'm fine with the whole band, because I found it more entertaining. Sometimes, you know, like we just did something for BBC, I was cringing through it as the guitar player talks about this song that we just put out as a single called 1,000 Hours, and talked about, yes, I was heavily influenced by Van Halen. Tonally, you got to understand that nobody's going to listen to that song and draw a line to Van Halen alternatively be positively affected by the fact that you were influenced by Van Halen when you wrote it. But whatever, that's your truth, that's your reality, that's the best. For OXBOW completists, that'll be useful information. To me, it's a distraction and not effective. But you know what? It's a fuller interview.
Right.
So you just can't have my agit prop being the only one. So I'm happy to have some of the weight taken off of me. And we're a 4-piece, and the rhythm section often has pretty insightful things that they say.
So as somebody who makes their living primarily from writing and journalism, when you go into that into writing mode, and I'm speaking about music here, like if you're going to sit down and pen lyrics, is creativity like kind of coming into you throughout the day, or do you set time aside? What's your creative process like?
I tell you, I don't have any patience at all for these guys who mythologize or the mythification of this process.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like, I'm kind of gone soft on Nick Cave these days, but I kind of like his deal of like, I get up, put my suit on, I go out to my office, and I sit my ass in that chair and I write all day. And at 5 o'clock, I'm done. Get up and go home. It's a job like any other job.
Yeah.
And that's typically what I'll do is with the first 7 OXBOW records, I had the lyrics already planned out, and I would just give them to the band, and they would come up with music. This last record that's coming out this summer, Love's Holiday, we did it very differently. They pretty much came with the music, and I wrote the lyrics to the music because the thematic, 1 through 7 of those records, you could lay it end to end, and it's like a diary. And I wanted to. The book is over, from Fuckfest to Thin Black Duke. That's one record in my mind.
Yeah.
So I was more than happy to have the songs then suggest words. And my lyrical preoccupations for this record, given the title Love's Holiday, were of course about love, but not specifically necessarily just connected to my own life.
Right.
So it was put the music on, they emailed me the songs, or I heard them when we go to rehearsal, and I just sit and wrote the lyrics on the phone or on a scrap piece of paper or a tissue or something, and type it and send it out. And usually I say, you should hold on to these because I probably won't.
Yeah. Is it frustrating when you sit? Is it frustrating when you pen songs though? Because and again, I've talked about this with other musicians on here. It seems like the music, the consumption of music really seems to be obviously not what it was, and it seems like people's attention spans certainly have dwindled down. It's a fast-paced world. People are trying to do a million things throughout the day. When they have time to listen to music for their own enjoyment, it seems like they either go back to their old standards and they don't explore new music, or they've got time for a couple of songs off your album, or they skip to the songs they like and they don't really explore deep tracks or listen to an album in its entirety, the way it was conceptualized and how the artist wants you to listen to it. Is that frustrating sometimes to think like, God damn, man, I wrote some great shit here, but some of this probably isn't even going to be fucking listened to?
No. Because
that's probably healthy, Eugene. That's probably healthy.
Well, no, it's just the old dude in us that thinks that way, right?
Yeah.
Like I still think of things like, if it's somebody who I like, I'm on Apple Music and I'm on all these places too, but I'll go out and buy their entire record because I'm still thinking about albums, and I'm pretty sure they are. So I want to hear the record in its entirety. I don't want to hear a collection of singles.
Right.
I want to hear the record. However, that being said, this record that we just did, the Love's Holiday, we actually were interested to have Epitome, the record label, have their input. And they are doing things that we never would have even thought to do, both in terms of, okay, these are the singles that we're going to release. This is how we're going to release them. This is the order. 1,000 Hours was their first choice. Yeah. And none of us in the band would have ever made that our first choice. So they seem to, in the first 7 hours, they had 250 pre-sales. So they're pretty happy with that. And so people are buying the record on the basis of one song. If that's the way things are doing business, that's cool. But the reality of it is, we don't like to golf. So this is our hobby, right?
Right.
You know, the amount of money we put into this record. I just told Steve Von Till from Neurosis how much we put into this record, and he was like, "What, you fucking crazy?" He goes, "This is what we spend on records," and we were like, "There's no way I could record a 7-inch for that, given how we make music."
Right.
So, you know, we don't ever expect it to be a winning proposition. We're just like the old blues guys. Like, we want a label to care enough to be able to put out the next record.
Right.
We are so deep financially in the hole that, you know, the idea of getting paid back for these things is just not going to happen. I haven't gotten paid in a legitimate way for OXBOW in years because we're still deep in the hole on Thin and Black Duke. So I'm not making music to make money. Live shows, yes, we expect to. That's how we're paying down the debt. But otherwise, yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ipecac Records is Mike Patton's label, right? From Faith No More. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. I mean, and how long have you been on that label?
Well, they signed us for this record for Love's Holiday. So it was supposed to come out in 2022, but you know, we work very slowly. So it's coming out in this year. So I think we signed a deal with them in 2021. And
so Mike's a fan then.
Yeah. Apparently, based on the text I'm getting from him, he's pretty happy with the record, you know.
Yeah.
So, but we've been around for a long time, and I actually asked him, you know, we've been around for a long time. You guys have been around for a long time. We've had this discussion before, like, hey, why don't you put out a record? And you never have before. And the guy, Greg, from the label, was 100% honest with me. He was like, we didn't like the records. They're like we thought you guys were great live. You know, you're great live proposition, but we weren't hearing the records until Thin and Black Duke. And then we're like, okay. So.
And then what's touring like for you now at this juncture of your life? Because obviously, you know, you don't do things the same way at 20 as you do when you're, you know, in your 50s. You know, does the itinerary change? You know, when kids come into the equation and grandkids and family and stuff, are you able to go out and do tours? Or, you know, when you guys go do shows, is it go do some select dates and then, you know, stop?
Well, most because of employment and jobs and stuff. So we'll do like 16 days straight. And, you know, no days off, 16 days straight in Europe. And then when we come back to do the States, we'll do Thursday, Friday, Saturday gigs to try to chop up the United States.
Yeah.
So we don't have to quit jobs so that we're not on the road. And you know, there was a weird period there when some of my kids were younger, when it was super tough, when there was like you and I are talking and we can see each other.
Right.
20 years ago, this was not the case.
Right.
You know, little kids don't want to talk on the phone.
Right.
You know, they'll talk if they could see you. So being on tour now with a 3-year-old is a little easier, but you know, I miss my kids, but I don't, you know, I've never been, the longest tour we did was about 12 weeks. And we were all probably about to lose our minds at the end of it. We do a really physical show. We're in good enough shape to do 12 weeks, but emotionally we were probably wrecks at the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in any heavy, hard, but you know, you're away from the people that you call your families. Little, it's disorienting. So, but so you know, 16 days is I mean, I've already toured. I toured twice last year with Buñuel. That's my other big side project, this Italian super group of which I have to be a non-Italian. And we did 16 shows in July, and then like 20 shows in October, and those were good. And then you know the kid came over for the last show, and then we all. I mean, it is what it is, right? I spend most of my time not touring, so I can deal with time touring.
Right. So the new album comes out when?
July 12th, I think.
July 12th. And do you have any information on the memoir in terms of a release date, title, anything
August.
like that? August?
The memoir comes out in August, and it's called A Walk Across Dirty Water and Straight into Murderer's Row. And it's on Feral House, the same people who did Harley's autobiography. So,
and most importantly, because I in recent years have had some eye difficulties and some eye surgeries, I have really gotten to the point where I've fallen in love with these audiobooks. Will you narrate an audio version of it?
We're talking about that right now because I have got a friend at Audible And I have not gotten a response back as to whether they want me to do this. In as relaxed as I am about OXBOW and finances, I am completely not that way with the writing stuff. So it's like, I'm like, what is that line from that movie where that guy says, "It's not about that. It's about my motherfucking money."
Yeah.
It's like, I'll do an audiobook. I did an audiobook for the fight book. And that's, a double CD, and that was pretty cool.
Which I cannot seem to get my hands on. I was only able to find it on my on the platform that I read books on. I was only able to find it in printed version.
Really? No.
Yeah.
Well, part of that I think is Hydra had put it out, and then they ceased being a label. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got tons of them around here somewhere. See, what happened is HarperCollins is a big publisher, and so we worked with Hydra Head. So Hydra Head says, "How many of these should we print up?" Thinking that there was going to be some kind of co-branded cooperation.
Right.
And HarperCollins goes 5,000. But HarperCollins had no intent of putting these in bookstores at all. They were just like saying numbers that seemed to make sense to them. So
what do you have them on? You actually have them on CD?
Yeah, it's a double CD. Yeah.
Oh man, I've got to get my hands on one of those. I could imagine you read it, and are you narrating?
Yeah. Oh
yeah. Man.
Yeah. No, now you got me interested. I'm gonna look around and see if I could find a link, because I'm sure somebody's selling them, because they keep moving. So
yeah. Because the one thing I like about the audiobooks is when people put out their memoir and they narrate themselves. Wherein I think when someone has lived it and they know where to put different inflections and emphasis on certain stories, I think it just plays so much better. It just
the only problem from my point of view is I can't figure out how you do it in a way that makes sense. If it's a one-to-one correlation, the book is like 260 pages.
Right.
I don't listen to enough myself. Would I be reading every page of the book? Is that how it works, or are you picking sections? Or okay.
No, you actually read the whole book. The last one that I read was Mark Lanigan's book, From Screaming Trees, and it was about 11 and a half hours.
Okay.
Yeah, about 11 and a half hours. And of course you can bookmark it, wherever you want and pick right up again or whatever.
Did you find it on Audible, or where'd you find it?
Oh geez, I don't even know. I don't even know what the hell app I even read them on, but it's yeah, I guess it's Audible. Yeah, I guess it's
okay.
Yeah, I guess it's Audible.
All right,
yeah.
I'll mention this to the publisher again. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have it. I got the time, so I might as well do it as long as I've got the voice. Right?
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you doing this, man. I could sit here and just fucking talk to you all fucking day long, man. I get the feeling, but it's been an honor and really a privilege, and just being able to
where are you now?
I'm in upstate New York.
I know. I see the Giants thing behind you. I figured you had to be. You had to be in New.
I'm probably closest to, if I could put it in correlation, I'm probably closest to the nearest big city would be Syracuse.
Yep. I played up there. I played up in Albany, Broadway Joe's.
Yeah. I'm smack dab right in the middle of the state. It's funny when I say upstate New York. Usually when I tell people I live in New York State, they want to know what borough, because they instantly think the city. You know what I mean? And then pretty much anything that isn't the city is upstate. The whole rest of the goddamn state is upstate.
I know. That's for me too. If you said upstate, oh, you mean Albany? That's what I would have said. Albany. Yeah. That's funny. All right. Well, hey, thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh man, I salute you and I appreciate it. And I will be looking forward to the book, no matter what version it comes out in. Man, I will be on it, and I am delving into the music and really enjoying what I'm hearing so far. I mean, cool. Full disclosure, I came to the party late with the music and found you through the book, but how I find you is how I find you.
Hey, man, what is that thing that Charles Manson said? There are lots of ways to get to the cross.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, this has been a pleasure, and hopefully we can keep in touch. And when the book comes out, we can get on here and do it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll send you a link for the double CD if I find one.
Yeah. And I've also been following the podcast too. I really like the podcast too.
Which one?
Oh, what the hell was the one that I saw you doing the other day? It looks like you're very much in the same room that you are now doing it.
Yeah. Oh, because there's one I do with two other guys.
No, you were by yourself. You're by yourself.
So Show Stomper.
Show Stomper. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll drive.
How do you find the podcasting? Because I've only been doing it for about 8 months, but the reception's been really good, and I've landed some really great interviews. And I'll certainly, when I put yours up in a few days, I'll send you the link, and you can feel free to share. Free to share wherever you'd like. But I'm finding that everybody and their brother is fucking podcasting nowadays, though.
Well, what's the deal is that like you collect your own, right? So like I've got like I used to do the show from the car. And so I've got people from back 2007, 2008 who will remember the car shows and listen to the car shows and are still listening. And it's like at this point now it's family, right? It's not even, and that, which I totally love. I have an active comment section. It's posted 2 days after, but live is the thing. So it's usually Sunday afternoon. It goes live. Yeah. And that serves an emotional, like I really enjoy that. But it's weird. Then I watched a guy yesterday who he's using a Twitch model, right? Mm-hmm. So he picks a segment. I think he picked, I can't even remember. Some Hitler was in the title, but he has Bill Burr's comedy routine. Yep. He reduces it into a screen, and then he makes comments on Bill Burr's commentary. Oh, it's about black athletes and Hitler, right? So it's a funny beat. So he'll he'll do this thing. Bill Burr says something funny about the ride home from that Olympics in Nazi Germany must have been pretty quiet. Yeah. And then the guy pauses it, and then he looks at the camera and goes, mm-hmm. And then he rolling the video, and dude has got 750,000 followers. So I'm like, you know what? Why am I even bothering? But then
what am I doing wrong? Right.
Yeah, but then we have such a dedicated core of people who have been fucking like, this is a really emotional need for them, and clearly for me as well. That I'm like, I'll do this. I'll do this until the wheels roll off. So
why not?
It would be nice to have 750,000 followers, but I would rather have mine than that guy's, right?
And that's what I feel like too. I'm just barely I'm just getting the 200 subscribers now, which people tell me is really great considering I've only been doing it for 8 months. It's not even so much the views, but the fact that people, they buy into what you're doing and they say, wow, you're getting some interesting guests on here. You know what I mean? All of them are pretty much organic though. Like I didn't go chase down my friends and say, hey, subscribe to my page, subscribe to my page. It's nice when they find it organically and they like what you do, and I get the email alert, oh, so-and-so subscribed to you. And they're all people that I don't know, you know what I mean? So that's pretty rewarding, that.
Hey man, listen, let me tell you, my last company that I worked at, I was consistently trying to tout the benefits of organic growth to my boss, and he just wasn't hearing it. And he got arrested by the feds. Oh, that's the story. That's the story. My piece for the New York Times was about this guy. Multiple acts of fraud, trying millions of dollars misappropriated, all trying to drive traffic. That in my mind, you've been better served doing organically. That's legit. Give me 1,000 legit people over, Filipino click farms where you've got 50 million bullshit clicks. No.
But the big problem that I am running into now, though, and I just ran into this in the last couple weeks or so, but and I certainly have gotten my share of phone calls on my cell phone where people are trying to scam you out of money or whatever. There's a lot of that going around, but now it's leaking its way into when I reach out to people for guests. A lot of phony profiles out there of people perpetrating to be celebrities, and you can sniff them out pretty good, because they instantly start to give you the racket like, yeah, sure, I'd love to come on and do the podcast, but are you familiar with our fan club, our membership, or whatever? And they instantly start to, slide into that whole fucking thing about getting some money out of you, and you just know no one's going to come at you like that immediately when you're trying to get them as a guest. Even people that want to be paid to appear on a podcast wouldn't take that route. I mean, no. Ordinarily, they'll just say, yes, I get paid to do it. It's this much if you want me for a half an hour. It's this much if you want me for an hour. No,
man, I'm a journalist. We don't pay for interviews.
No, I haven't paid for any.
We're serving a press function, and then if you don't need the public relations, go then get on with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I find most of the people that come on usually have something to promote, and I don't have to tell you this, being in the music business, it's feast or famine. So if someone can come on a podcast and 150 people watch it, and 75 of them people become fans and go out and buy their album, I mean, like, it really seems like it's become scratching and clawing in the music business nowadays. So it's tough.
I'll tell you what was funny is that our last record, it did well, but it did so well that the record label contacted us and said, "We think that our site's been hacked." I go, "Why is that?" "You're selling so many records."
That's quite that's quite an endorsement, huh?
I thought that was great. Yeah. So anyway, all right.
It's been great talking to you, Eugene. I appreciate it so much, man. And I'll definitely keep in touch, and I'll be looking forward to talking to you. Maybe closer to when the memoir comes out.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. And then I'll send you that link when I find it. And then send me a link for the show when it's ready.
I'll appreciate it, Eugene. Okay. Thank you so much, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Later.
All right, later. There he goes, folks. EUGENE S. Robinson. If you know him from the music world, hardcore band Whipping Boy. Now he's in OXBOW, a phenomenal band that I was late to the party at finding, but I am discovering them now, and I'm really liking what I hear. Just a very interesting band, and he is an interesting fellow with an interesting take on a lot of things. How I found him is through his book. Again, I will tell you the title of it, and if you're somebody that's into combat sports, pugilism, fighting, and all of its different variations, you will love this book. It is called Fight: Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Ass Kicking, but were afraid you'd get your ass kicked for asking. Do go check that book out on whatever book platforms or bookstores that you venture into. You go into a Barnes & Noble, they don't have it, make them fucking order it, because they will do that shit for you. And go check him out in OXBOW. And if you want to go back and explore his earlier work, he was in a hardcore band called Whipping Boy. But the OXBOW stuff, real interesting, real different. Don't want to put it into a genre or a box, because too many music journalists do that already. You go make your own determinations on like what genre you think it is. I just think they're a great rock and roll band. And also big news, as he mentioned, his memoir will be coming out. This is a guy that's definitely gone out and lived life, a full, rich life, and seen and done a lot in the music world and the journalism world. He's written for articles for numerous well-renowned publications. So very interesting guy, and so pleased that he came on here to do this interview. I knew he'd be an interesting interview. And, that's what PodScum's all about. Love to just have interesting conversations with people. So I hope you found it interesting. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of PodScum. And as always, let me remind you that until we get together and do this thing again, remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.